All right, let's give it a try. All right. Hi, good morning or good evening or wherever you are. This is Don, and today is October 19th, 2020. I have to apologize tonight. This is not going to be a really well planned event. So we'll just go from there. 15 days till this monstrosity is over. This monstrosity I'm talking about is the election 2020. So, where do we start? Where can I start? Where do I want to start? Boy, are you tired? Are you tired? Let me go check something real quick. I think I'm tired because I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm tired, and I think we're all tired of a few things, right? There we go, better. All right, better. So, it's been a long couple of years. It's been a long year. COVID, the economy, economics, businesses, you name it, we've had a whole long list of issues happen. Tragedy, concerns. It's kind of been draining on a lot of us, I think, as a country and as a society. But good news, by this time, in 16 days, we will have a clearer picture of what the country has said or is saying or is in the process of saying about who will lead the country as either the 45th president or the 46th president of the United States. And concurrently in Nevada and elsewhere in the country, who will decide the balance of power or who will be in charge of the state houses, governorships, state senates, U.S. Senate, and the United States House. So, tonight, I'm just going to give you a quick update. I'm starting with this one tonight. And I am starting with this point in time. Today, job approval numbers. I note that because there is a strong historical trend with this number and people getting reelected to their respective offices or being returned to office. I am going to start what I consider the modern era about this time. So, Nixon reelected. Didn't run for a second term. Actually, he did run for a second term in his own right, but didn't run for a second term. Ran for a second term and won, was impeached. Was not impeached, was almost impeached. Resigned before he got impeached. Took over after that and enjoyed some high approval numbers a little bit. And then immediately after signing a pardon, sunk down. Also, the doldrums of the second oil crisis hit, as well as some other economic issues. It's what they call stagflation. Right? Impacted the Ford administration for a considerable amount of time. He had to do a bounce back briefly, but for the duration of the Ford administration, it was a complete and utter misery in terms of polling and approval ratings until the end of his administration when he effectively lost to Jimmy Carter from Georgia. Jimmy Carter, inverse situation, took over, was believed to be a different take on things on the South. The governor for the South, sunnier outlook, a little more man of the people kind of approach, but also really, really smart. I guess background as a nuclear engineer. High approval numbers until things, again, the economy started affecting him. And in the middle of his term, he had a couple of bounce back events that occurred to help him out. I'm trying to remember what that event that was. Oh, man. And during the Carter administration, a lot of them swung back for a brief bit. But unfortunately, the economy swung back. I think this is 77, 78. I'm trying to remember. I'm going to skip a bit of the Carter years because essentially what everyone notes about the Carter years is basically the years late 78, 79, and 80, which were a complete disaster for him in that time period. Namely, oil crisis occurred again. He had an oil crisis. The economy collapsed on a global recession came over again. And then in response, he tried to put energy standards. I think that's where that came from a little bit. So he tried to put energy standards to try to mitigate those factors. Famously was wearing a sweater at the White House, put the temperature of the White House at like 77 or 67 degrees to try to cut back on fuel or on energy consumption. The Iran hostage crisis occurred in this time period. And this is when essentially the famous Ronald Reagan was getting his campaign in South Carolina at that time. And he never really recovered. Carter, for the longest time, was considered, unfortunately, the benchmark, the low benchmark of polling standards, of Gallup approval standards because of what happened. But nevertheless, he was defeated in the 1980 election by former California Governor Ronald Reagan, who started off with his term with a bit of a honeymoon as well, and slowly dwindled a little bit because he was fighting global recession up until 81, 82. He was shot, and I believe he had a bit of an uptick. He was shot at by John Hinckley Jr. in 81. He had a bit of a pop-up effect because of that, and also the economy started to improve, as well as he was able to forge a deal with Tip O'Neill on balancing the budget and a couple other items. He was able to swing. He was able, I think, in the second term, somewhere in here. He was able in 83, 84 to ride the economy back into success and use that as part of his quote-unquote famous Morning in America campaign, which allowed him the re-election in 84 against Walter Mondale. And pretty much in the second term, he survived. He had a pretty good run. Most of his numbers were above the 50% mark, which allowed his vice president, and the guy that ran against him in the 1980 election, 1980 primary, Republican primary, George H. Bush from Texas, technically from Connecticut. Oh, he's from, I mean, he used to vacation Cape at Bunkport, Maine, but who's counting? Anyway, I shouldn't say that. Anyway, George H.W. Bush takes over the reins as commander-in-chief in his own right. Finally gets to command the country. And he's really considered, he's supposed to be considered an acolyte and a mold of his boss. Old boss, he famously touts at the Republican convention, I think it was at Houston, read my lips, no new taxes, as a pledge, as a major policy pledge that has unfortunately been the undoing of the moderates in the Republican Party to this day. I'll quote me on that one. I'm just assessing that one. But nevertheless, Bush goes up to pretty high ratings. He has the wind of the economy going for him a little bit until it doesn't. He has the wind of the Gulf War. Because of the Gulf War, so the highest approval ratings in American history at that time. Which is funny because in some sense the same thing happened after 9/11. Go figure. Has some of the highest approval ratings in American history at that time. Also within months, but also had one of the lowest approval ratings within months because the economy became that much of an issue in 91 and 92. So much so, when the Clinton campaign modeled their famous campaign message on "It's the economy, stupid." In response to that, these numbers they saw. I'm going to try to flash forward to get to this point in time because it's relevant, absolutely relevant to what we're dealing with right now. Nevertheless, the economy was the sinker that took him out, not took George H.W. Bush out, not the Iraq War that he successfully prosecuted against Saddam Hussein. Not the fact that he got challenged with a right by Pat Buchanan and others in the Republican Party. It's the fact that the economy, the base closures, other unpopular policies ended up being his undoing. And also, he went back on his word. And that also was a big factor for Republicans. He went back on his word on taxes and lost a big part of his base. It probably played a big factor to Ross Perot's effective ability to take a huge chunk of the Republican base with him, with Ross Perot throughout the country in the '92 election. And he was kind of forced to. I mean, the political situation he was in was kind of a creation of this guy. He had either he balances the budget, or he had to cut spending based upon the revenues he was faced with. And so he kind of did the good stewardship thing, historically speaking. I'm not saying this is what I think happened. Bush could have cut government spending and could have cut it to the point of ridiculousness, so to speak, to try to balance the budget, or he could afford to deal with the Democrats and prevent a major government shutdown. Take your risk, take your pick. George H.W. Bush was a good governance guy. He took the keep the lights on approach. As a result, he had to raise taxes, and he did. He had to raise taxes, I think, on moderate and higher income earners. So to make that happen, and there you go. Lost the floor. And therein enters this guy from Hope, the man from Hope, Bill Jefferson Clinton. And the Democrats do a unique event by electing this guy. They elected a centrist Democrat, by the way. And again, he kind of walks in with pretty moderate numbers the duration of his presidency. He's a unique Democrat in that for the duration of his presidency, he was mostly above positive, despite a lot of things going right and wrong for him. He had the biggest thing going for him. He had the boom economy in the 1990s going for him. The dot-com bubble was effectively gurgling at that point in time. He also had survived an impeachment in 1998-99, which ended up being the Republicans' undoing briefly for a little bit, but it didn't hurt them long because they were able to kind of move on to the next issue, which kind of created the most famous election of American history to occur in our time, the 2000 election, where the hanging Chad issue hung over Bill Clinton's Vice President, Al Gore, and prevented him from potentially winning in Florida. Potentially, I'm not saying that for certain. But it allowed George Walker Bush of Texas to become the 43rd president. 43, I think that's 43. I always call him 43. Used to call him 43. 43 has a hell of a ride as president of the Gallup polls. And that's important to note because he kind of had a rough start because of the election. There was a cloud of legitimacy in the fact he didn't win the popular vote. Let's just establish that as a fact. But he did win the Electoral College and effectively being president. Remember, in America, I'm not going to get to that. I'm not going to have that discussion tonight because my Democratic friends will get really pissed off at me, and my Republican friends will either say I'm saying it wrong or saying it incorrectly. So the famous debate: are we a democracy, or are we a Democratic republic? Or are we a Democratic republic, or are we straight a republic? Not going there tonight. I'm not. That's what civics and constitutional law is for. Nevertheless, Bush administration. He's having a rough time because the dot-com bubble finally burst on his watch. Enron, the California's dealing an energy crisis, namely the lights go out. This actually kind of destroys Gray Davis's political career. Creates the gobernador, as we know him, effectively, in this time period, in this brief time period. But that's his polling numbers, about 50% during that time. Until a hateful morning on September 11, 2001. 19 hijackers from assorted countries of Saudi Arabia, I want to say Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and 2 other countries boarded 4 airliners from Boston, New York, Washington Dulles, and I remember one other airport. They boarded planes and crashed them into 4 sites throughout the country, taking nearly 2,200 lives throughout the country. Worst terrorist attack in American history, and the American people responded. They rallied around the flag, and Mr. President, George Bush, led at that moment in time. And one of the most chaotic moments in my adult life, and at least my young life at that time. And he had one of the highest Gallup polling ratings in American history at that point. And sadly, it kind of goes down from there. pulling data from these major points, you can kind of see literally in the Bush administration, key points in American history in the Bush administration in this data line, just straight up. So the next major history point, was we have 9/11. There's a response. We decide to go to Afghanistan on Operation Enduring Freedom, which we still are on to a degree, just different variants of it. Then we go to Iraq. There's a lead up to Iraq. There was a lot of down negative debate because of that, but there was a rally around the flag approach to that. I'm trying to remember what date that is specifically. %, by the way, for everyone's reference. That's day 799. He hits, this is notable, there's hit 3 major points in the Bush administration, historical points in the Bush administration, that everyone needs to remind themselves at. Lowest point is around 28% or 26, 27. But another major point was he wins re-election. He wins re-election right around here, and it's a close shave against the United States Senator John Forrest Kerry of Massachusetts, when the war was just in a rough state. And it's notable because he was on the rocks at that point in time. Notable. Also notable, the Iraq War effectively turns around 2006, and it really never takes it. The Iraq War, the economy, other things start taking a toll of the Bush administration. By the end of the Bush administration, the Iraq War is a quagmire that sinks the Republican ticket across the board. In 2008, the economy is in doldrums. It's the failure of Lehman Brothers, Wall Street, firms going down. Basically, the bailouts, TARP, the auto bailouts, these events literally just gave everyone this thought that this guy was poisoned in terms of politics and leadership. And he leaves office with one of the lowest opinion ratings in American history at that time. And thus ushering in the most famous, the era of change, as we all know it, the election of Barack H. Obama from Illinois, at the time a U.S. Senator, first term U.S. Senator, on the ticket with Obama and Biden. So Obama comes in, and the Obama administration is a weird administration because I can tell you exactly where he wins the re-election, right there. He had a funny, weird polling situation where, in the beginning, really well liked, but he had a high, comes in. There's the first year of the administration, the honeymoon, and then the healthcare battle begins. And then after the healthcare battle, 2010. 2010 was probably a pivotal time for the administration because the famous shellacking comment is a reference to his basically getting his legislative butt kicked. The Democrats lost the House. They almost lost the Senate, only but. They would keep the Senate for another 4 more years. But losing the House ended up becoming, invariably for the Obama administration, the next to worst thing that could have happened to him. It almost reminds me of what happened to this guy when he lost the House in 1972. All hell broke loose in terms of investigations, subpoena power, things like that. Because whenever you lose a legislative House in an election, you invariably give the opposition party the ability to make your life a living hell. In terms of political strategy, in terms of investigation of power, in terms of subpoena power. But on your end, your ability to legislate and get your agenda through stops. Unless you negotiate, unless you've got a partner who will negotiate, which in the case of the Obama administration, at that point in time, or near that point in time, John Boehner couldn't even get his own people on side, much less try to deliver negotiating points. And this is also the rise of the Tea Party, which theoretically, even looking back now, the Tea Party is effectively a dead movement from my point of view because it is no longer, its players are still alive, but its values are not. at least in my interpretation. They don't exist in terms of a viable operational movement in the House anymore or in the Senate. Just a thought, because they stopped polling, thankfully. But back in 2010, they were a threat. They were a serious political movement. And to Barack Obama, they were a problem. So much so, they shut the government down a couple times. That is important to note because the Obama administration was able to take that moment and turn around and utilize it and realize they had to get the ship in order. And they stopped, basically, as they would say, stopped playing around, so to speak, and started to focus on 2016, 2012. As a result, history may regard that shellacking as a good thing to happen, though, politically, because it got them into a position to favorability ranges that could get them passable. Now, which it did in terms of when their polling rating started getting to above 50%. Notable because this range, or at least in this neck of the woods, if you can't get above a 50% rating or near that or above that, you're in trouble. History says the people who win re-election win because they're above 50%. Now, I'm going to flash forward. The Obama administration ends, let's just flash forward a little bit. The Obama administration pretty much ends in gridlock where no major policy initiatives are passed because they lose control of the Senate in 2014. The House, they never really regained control over until 2018. The Obama administration is basically executive orders from here on out and kind of trying to protect their signature major policies on the economy, the ACA, and things of that nature. But there is a surprise that occurs in 2016. The assumption was that this lady by the name of Hillary Rodham Clinton from New York was supposed to take over and take the reins of the administration. And theoretically, it created a third Obama term. That's not what happened, as we all know. Something weird happened, you could say. This moment in American history happened.
TK5 is bringing
not this. This is an ad.
You'll look.
It is not 11:30 in East. You hear that chime? We have a projection. It is a big one. It is the state of Florida. 29 electoral votes. They go to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has won the state of Florida, one of his must-win states right there. One of his keys to victory. He said all along he was going to win that state. He's got a home in that state. He worked hard in that state. He has pulled out a victory there. He is pulling ahead of Hillary Clinton. You see it right there, 222 electoral votes to 197 for Hillary Clinton. Matthew Dowd, this is the big one. Oh, it's huge. This was the one that for the last month, the Clinton folks said, we win Florida, it's all over. And Donald Trump absolutely did it. He got it. And now, as we've talked about, he has many different ways to get to the 270 votes he needs to be the next president of the United States. This is the Clinton County had a surge of Latino voters in the state of Florida. It looks like they actually probably did get an increase in Latino turnout. It wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough, and radio silence from Brooklyn right now. We know that Hillary Clinton is not too far away from here in Times Square in a hotel with Bill Clinton and Chelsea. And George, just a couple of hours ago, we were getting details from inside the Clinton campaign down to what their granddaughter Charlotte was wearing, and she had an H on her t-shirt and what the catering was. And I think the fact that how silent they are right now speaks volumes to how absolutely nervous they must be at this stage.
1984 is going to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton on the East Coast, John Paul. So here's what Hillary Clinton now.
All right, sorry. I am going to try to do this rewriting here. This is why pre-queuing stuff really helps.
already said what y'all are passions to be extraordinary. We're bringing you American Wagyu beef from Snake River Farms. The waiting will aggravate you. The calling it early and making a mistake will bury you. And here we go. This is a Fox News election alert. Pennsylvania goes to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. And there's the big board, the 20 electoral votes from the state of Pennsylvania. We just got new metrics in. Donald J. Trump.
Just a friendly reminder, this is Fox News Declaration of Chefs that has been found on
January, but the word has just reached the New York Hilton. Donald J. Trump, the son of a Queens millionaire, defied all conventional wisdom and all expectations. The long-term practices of the Republican Party were stood on their head. He spoke to the disaffected. He spoke a sense of trickle-down economics.
Most of them were supporters and advocates for
we've updated our electoral scorecard.
what is going on. We are going to make this decision now. The Fox News decision desk has called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This means that Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States, winning the most surreal election that we have ever seen. This candidacy starting on an escalator ride 1 year ago and going down against 16 Republican candidates. What started off as unlikely, impossible, is now reality.
And distinct privilege to introduce to you the President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Right now, a historic moment. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Donald Trump wins the presidency. The business tycoon and TV personality capping his improbable political journey with an astounding upset victory. Donald J. Trump will become the 45th president of the United States, defeating Hillary Clinton in a campaign unlike anything we've seen in our lifetime. Donald Trump wins the presidency of the United States. He is
So, that event happened, and we've been on this wild ride ever since. So, the president, Donald J. Trump, has been in a unique political position from Gallup's approval rating since day one. I note that because America in history is not kind data-wise to those who have not done this. Presidents really never had a positive rating above 50%, except for some brief moments late in the administration. And those moments were during the coronavirus briefing situation where he was giving the briefings or not giving them for a brief minute. But he's really never had a rating above 50%. Remember though, he never won he did not win an popular vote. He won an electoral victory to get through his gun. He's really had a number strong to the base. And his Republican approval ratings amongst Republicans have always been 80s or 90s. Here we are, 15 days away from Election Day. Here's a tad bit under 50. I note that is a historical, not anomaly, but a point of historical importance because without that number being above 50, you might as well kiss the presidency goodbye. Where we are, according to Gallup, is 46%. So, Here we are. He's 4 points. The point of these, you could say theoretically he's within the margin of error if you want to be generous, but that would be generous on some days. Here's where we stand according to general respects of the country. And I'm trying my darndest not to buy national polls, because national polls are not national polls. This is from the right-leaning Real Clear Politics, who I used to rely on a lot. I still do. The national average, which is an average of everyday polls, not an actual correct snapshot of what the hell's going on. They're saying 10-point margin at this point, according to all the information they have right now. And again, this is a right-leaning, tends to lean to the right on a few things. They are being generous on some key things. Being absolutely generous. Texas is in play. Texas is apparently in play. That means John Cornyn's seat is in danger, theoretically. Although, from my data I'm seeing on the Cornyn-Hagar race, Cornyn's going back, so I'm not even going to bother. Florida in play. Georgia in play. Georgia has not been in play since the 90s. North Carolina, the numbers on that are interesting there. Ohio. Republicans need Ohio. That is a must-win for Donald Trump. I have a list. My list says Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania. You do not. No Republican can get to 270 without 2 or 3 of these states in play. You lose Ohio, you need Pennsylvania and Florida. You lose Florida, you need Pennsylvania and Ohio. You lose 2 out of 3 of these guys, you're done. You just can't get to 270 because the mathematics work against you completely throughout the country. You have to find there's nowhere in the country that you can knock off from a Democratic political campaign to balance it out. There just isn't on the map. So if you're looking for, I'm going to tell you now, if you're looking at the national picture, the national map, when the poll closings start happening throughout the country on the eastern seaboard, look here, look here. Look through these 2 states, because these will probably vote similarly to a degree. The talk of the map, a big talk of expanding the map, and I think also Florida is another state that everyone's going to look at. I will always still look at Florida too. Minnesota has been the talk of a lot of people on the Republican ticket for a long time as a maybe pickup, as a point of aggressive offense. I tell you, looking at the data now, the demographics look smart. The demographics look great. It looks great. They did well. Minnesota was one of the few places in 2018 that Republicans got pickups in the House. But also, I heard from the chair of the Minnesota campaign when I was at TPAC, they're making I can't remember his name offhand, Mr. Pillow guy. They got shot here. Well, demographically, they're right. Also, recent news and recent memories with what's been going on with George Floyd situation definitely portend to that. But here's the thought. Here's the basic thought. Tina Davis, up for re-election, has got like an 8-point lead in the Senate. If that was true, that race would be in jeopardy. I don't see it. Minnesota, I say, is going blue. Nevada, on the other hand, let's swing home. Let's come home. Nevada is an interesting place right now in terms of ecosystem and politics. This is, to my fellow Nevadans, this is the election that changes everything around here for a long time. Under no uncertain terms, after this election, if the Republicans fail to stop a supermajority in the state assembly and lose a Senate seat anywhere in Nevada, anywhere, they're screwed. Flat out. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. A supermajority in either the state Senate or state assembly will eventually and invariably lead to marginalization politically for a better part of the next 5 years. And I say that because invariably the Republicans' tactical ability to stop legislation, to force negotiations at times, has only simply been because their opposition does not have the votes to force through legislation, and they had to go through other means to do it. And just recently, in the Settlemyer case, which Senator Settlemyer had to fund himself to advance regarding the two-thirds tax policy, the two-thirds initiative, I can't remember what it's called, the two-thirds rule on revenue generation and passing taxes or passing any bills out of the Senate that require that, was forced because they tried to do it via majority decision. If they were to try that in the future with the supermajority, there wouldn't be an issue there at that point, because it'd be legally tenable or legal, pass legal muster, because they have the two-thirds majority. So places like Senate District 15 in Nevada, in Reno, where I stand, that's my Senate district. And by the way, perfectly said, my Senate district, and I do have my ballot with me, why these things count, in my Senate district, loss of that district, and that district is on the bubble and a target for a very good reason. They win it and don't lose anything else in the state. They can do whatever they want, legislatively and administratively, in the next session, which is a major session because it's a redistricting session, as well as a chance to make some major economic reforms and policy reforms on schools, infrastructure, and whatnot. Besides the other ballot issues, the ballot choices they're on the ballot. Whew, sorry. And I say that screwed, not because I have a negative or a positive opinion of what the Republicans or Democrats are going to do. It's that this election for many Democrats in Nevada is a referendum on a decades-long set of policies. There is a great hunger and a great desire to do something in terms of changing the way business is done in Carson City, in terms of making Nevada, you could say, more of a 21st century community, a 21st century locality in regards to education policy, in regards to funding formulas, in regards to laws, and theoretically the whole kit caboodle. But who knows? I don't know at this time what's on the table at this point. Don't forget taxes too. That was an issue that came up in special session. Mining taxes. That came up. So, let's see. Yeah, going back to Nevada. Why this matters. The country as a whole, looking at the numbers, looking at this election. Why this? Why that polling data matters is why this matters to that map is if most Americans don't like you or don't like the administration, they will likely not vote for it. That's simple. Ask George H.W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, and Richard Nixon, and Johnson for a little bit. So, here we are, and I'm just going to go give you a brief point of why. Carson City Airport, where this is Don that I can do it here in Carson City at the Carson City Airport, where Republican President Donald J. Trump has just concluded his remarks on the president spoke for nearly an hour and 15 minutes here on the airport to and the party people and supporters try to urge them to go out and vote, and early vote, namely. And now that we're busy in the battleground this next day. For the party people to go out and vote, as well as to, this is the president's first visit since contracting COVID in D.C. after potential Rose Garden exposure, and also his last speech in Carson City and admitted President obviously attacked his opponent, Joseph P. Biden in Delaware, on the Democratic ticket, and made a case for the supporters of why he should give another 4 years on issues of gun rights, the economy, COVID response, and other issues of that nature. Besides that, that was the pitch. The president was down the party, was heading up to Rio. That's why I put for this evening here at the Carson Airport. I had a chance to speak with several people that attended tonight, by the way, so I'll post that online. Otherwise, that's all I have for you. All right, so that's my 10 cents on that. So, now let's go home back home to Reno. Why is this so bloody important? Well, I'll tell you why it's so bloody important. The Washoe County numbers here. I was on a call for county registrars this afternoon or this morning. This afternoon. And, told us things are doing okay. Quick 3-minute call, I didn't get a question in. I was actually more in the listening mode today. But it appears things are going briskly well. I mean, it's a brisk turnout according to the numbers. You can find these numbers at the county registrar's office, the website. Here's where we're sitting, I guess. 10,000 total, the mail-in. And we'll just do this together, folks. Okay. So that's where we're at as of today. So as of today, that's a number you can go ahead and safely say is in play, or is been counted by, and this is mail-in absentee so far. Out of that number, let's go ahead and go back. So that's the Democrat number. I'm sorry if I'm doing this in silence. It's kind of how I do it. All right. And then we just do simple math, and just going to add the number. Okay, there we go. There's your number. All right, so that's your number. Mail-in votes right so far, huh? All right. All right. Okay, so that's what we have for really low. Okay, and then all right, cool. There's your numbers, guys. And that, I want to highlight that. So right now, there's 609 people, 607 people right now that got signatures and ego squared away in Washoe County. So just a heads up. There we go. So there's the update here in Washoe County as of today. And so that is important. And again, those are our numbers here in Washoe County as of last week, the 16th. Because they update those numbers every Thursday. And I'm going to go ahead and do this here. So that, if you were curious and want to see where your ballot's at, that's ballot tracks. There you go. So there you go. Heads up. So that is what I got for tonight. Several issues. So as it stands tonight, I know if you're still watching, I have to give you points for that. Thank you for enduring my long discussion tonight as I cover some notes, some points, some information, some issues, some data, some relevance points. And I'm actually going to do this because I'm curious. Let's see what Carson City's doing. Let's see what happened with Carson City. As I'm curious to see if Carson City showed up. So that's Carson City right there. Republican advantage. 5,000. Let's do this real quick before I start talking on my ass. The Carson City advantage. No, that's not right. That's the advantage between Republicans and Democrats in Carson City. Republicans have a 4,700 Republican advantage. So that got maximized to full capacity. Republicans outnumber everybody. And doesn't show me the numbers. Yeah, it doesn't show me the number now. But so far, this is who's voted. In Carson City. And yeah. So, yeah. So there we go. So, I'm struggling to find out what I want to say at this point. So, oh, that's what I was looking to do. Yes, so I'm going to show you all the country. So, yes, where we're at right now. So, unique point of the moment right now. Tillis-Cunningham race stolen on the bubble. Special election, 50-50 shot. More like they're not going to, those not going to have 50%. There'll be a runoff there. I once said that was tilt, the lean Republican. I'm still trying to figure out how Joni Ernst screwed that one up. Or then that team did it, but they did it. And then I was like that constituency's like, hey, come on, really? Montana's on the bubble. I mean, you know, but then again, Steve Bullock's a good candidate, so I have to give him points for that. So here's how we stand on this, guys. Projection. I'm going to make that a lean. I'm going to make that a lean. I'm going to make that a lean too. I'm going to say that, and as a result, the forecast I say Kamala Harris is not tie-breaking anymore. You're at 52. Here we go. You're at 52. Senate majority is the Democrats. You theoretically could change the filibuster rules, and boom, there you go. So, that's up. But the bubble, I still say, is this one. So, as we sweep across the country on election night, looking at the Senate map, places all should be looking at: Florida, Ohio, and Iowa. So that means that, the polls close at like first in the middle in Kentucky, West Virginia, 7:30 kind of close. Then you'll likely hear a report of the polls closing in Florida around 8:30 extension probably. That means about 5 o'clock our time. Sweeping over here around 9 o'clock Eastern is when you get the big poll closings on the seaboard, and then you get the Central Time. And when you start getting there, that's about 7 o'clock our time, 6, 7 o'clock our time. We'll start hearing stuff about Michigan, wait times in Michigan, Wisconsin, and that neck of the woods. By the time we'll start to shut things down, we'll start getting the trickle numbers in Florida, Miami-Dade, Duval County, the I-5 corridor, and Orlando, and Tampa. The Panhandle will definitely come roaring through. Stuff like that. In Pennsylvania, Philadelphia is what I'm looking at. The city of Philly and the suburbs. And out here it'll be numbers, because Pennsylvania's kind of split into 2 time zones. Those numbers will be coming into 2. Ohio, I'm going to be looking at Cuyahoga County. Cuyahoga County is Cleveland. Is what I'm looking at. Cuyahoga County, I think Columbus, Ohio, is what I'm going to be looking at. And then the president's big bets. Out here, I'm going to start looking at too. In Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor. The city that matters the most to me right now is Detroit. Detroit and whatnot. Because the mistake the Democrats made in 2016 was they did not turn out Detroit. And let's see if they learn their lesson this time. So, that's Wayne County out there. Will they turn out? So, those are things I'm looking at here. So, just a quick guess at the moment. I say that's a lean. I say this is a lean. I say it's a lean. I say it's a lean. I'm leaving that there. And I'm leaving that there as that. Because right now I don't know. I know Susan Collins is gone. But I don't know about Maine right now. And it would be fair for me to say that. And so this early out, Nevada, on the other hand, I'm going to leave it the same. I'm not putting in anyone's box right now just because I'm early vote numbers early vote doesn't dictate. I don't know what early vote numbers look like to me. And early vote Nevada, despite what we have all calculated, despite this calculation, and this calculation is the one I look at the most, that's a stinking huge number. That's Washoe County. So keep this in mind. In Washoe County, as of today, nearly 150,000 Democrats have voted. Keep that in mind. That's huge. So just keep that in mind. Anyhow, I think I am going to go ahead and wrap this for the night because it's late. I'm hungry. And I think it's fair to say I've done a quick assessment of why we're here. But also, I'm going to do one more thing before we close. In Nevada, when I think about Nevada, I think about this. So here's where we are. In Nevada, as of September, this is the latest numbers they have that I can find. That's correctly what I did. So right now, in the state of Nevada, if we were to do the simple game of mathematics, and I've only done Washoe, not Clark. That's the difference between Republican and Democrat in Nevada. Even if you have, that's the difference as of September. Nonpartisans, even if they were to break, we'll say 60, let's just say 40%. It may make the difference for Republicans. That may be why Donald Trump's here. If 4% of those people break, 40. You overcome the deficit. That's a 40% break. Now, alternatively, if your Democrats break, if you get a higher level of break with Democrats, you got a problem. Then you got 1 million votes. The other 1 million votes coupled with that. And you suddenly have overcome that problem. So, that's why it matters. That's why it matters. So, anyway, folks, I think it's safe to say it's time to call it a night. We've had some fun. We've projected some of the issues. Nevada is definitely a place in play. This is just kind of, part of the game review, but just point of perspective. So, y'all have a good morning. I have some more stuff to review here in Northern Nevada. Naturally, locally, I'm going to try to do a local breakdown of candidates. My guess says in this election, not a lot of seats are going to change hands. Just because of the turnout capacity as well as I don't think a lot of people are wanting the propensity-wise wanting to change electeds right now. At least I'm not even talking to people and the voting behavior, but the turnout numbers do indicate Democrats are favored. Democrat candidates are favored higher than Republican ones. So, and right now in a lot of key municipal races, those races do favor Democrats. So I don't see, like I said, in Reno, I think the Reno race that has the highest chance of propensity of change is Ward 1, and it's only because there's both candidates are fighting for the seat. That's between Jay Brackus and J.D. Draculich. But again, the numbers I've been seeing benefit one party versus another, and that one party, one candidate has appeared to be a very open, without bias to a degree, towards one position. Early in the election cycle was out for a certain candidate. So that being said, I kind of, and that candidate is the incumbent. So we'll see though. 15 days between it, a lot that can happen now in 15 days. The at-large race, I don't see the numbers. I look at the numbers for Reno City Hall. I mean, I look at these numbers. I look at these numbers, and I don't see, unless there's a Republican turnout on election day that's just crazy, I don't see Eddie Lorton winning that race at this time. And it means that the at-large race likely retained by Devin Reese. And there's 3 reasons why. That race has actually been one of the toughest races I've seen in terms, not because of it's tough on the ground, it's been really not a nice race. Very bitter, acrimonious, very vicious race. Even though Lorton had the financial advantage going in, this was a race that definitely advantaged the incumbent in terms of messaging and organization. So that's another race. City Council Ward 3, that was kind of in the same situation except different. Not so acrimonious, unique in that the incumbent city councilman didn't really engage his opposition. He actually played a classic, play it safe. Didn't give his opponent, the Reno Washoe County librarian Rudy Leon, the space to talk or a chance to get elevated, so to speak. And by doing so, effectively ran a ghost campaign. And I think likely as a result, he's come out very forwardly and up front for Joe Biden, the presidential candidate Joe Biden. And again, has obviously thrown his lot into a certain political party. I see these numbers. He's obviously out and out as a Democrat. The campaign has embraced him as a candidate. I say he's going back. I just don't see the numbers unless there's a groundswell of local voters kind of going, I don't want to return Oscar. Oscar's likely to go back to City Hall. And then the other race, and that was the bubble race I was going to say. The one Republican, theoretically one Republican or right-leaning city council member, Ms. Jordan, hasn't really been running as a Republican, but running more as a constituency member. And alternatively, money's been on her side as well, versus city planner Darla Fink. Unless I see the numbers change, I don't see a chance. I see a unique situation where everybody gets returned. I don't see an upset likely unless these numbers change somehow. And historically, the first week of early voting, and mail-in voting has historically been a high predictor of the outcomes of elections in this neck of the woods. In 2018, Sisolak and Rosen really won the race in the first week, flat out. So, and it appears what's happened is a lot of this has played a big factor. The Democrats have utilized this method as much as possible. Kudos to them. So, sorry, I want to disrespect the hope. So, and in state assembly, I don't see a lot of races except for maybe 31 in Sparks, where that race between Skip Daly and Jill Dickman. I'm not going to say anything on this one, just because there's a lot of dynamics at play. The dynamics of this, and can the Republicans surge that? Can it surge, because that race has been the focus for a lot of Republicans. Skip has been made a political target by Republicans. So the question is, do they want it? I'm not going to say anything. I think Assembly 30, Nathan Anderson's pretty much locked that one away by choice of election of the opponent, but also the election. The numbers indicate what she's got, what's going on, as well as she has strong backing by union and local union support. And the other race that's on the bubble, Senate 15. These numbers should scare any Republican in that working on that show, because if those numbers portend, if the Democrat turnout in this district, in Senate District 15, is 3 to 4 points higher than Republicans, you have a new senator. Because Democrats, I think this time around, are voting party line, and they are not willing to do this loyalty test. She's been a good senator for X amount of years. I think Democrats this time around are not overlooking Senator Gansert's record. They are looking at Senator Gansert's record. They know she's a Republican. They're going to vote party line. I just see it that way. Wendy Harley Jenkins has been campaigning as a Democrat, has been openly campaigning, about those issues. Although point of criticism, I will say, and this is probably a function of her learning how to campaign. The message has been really more about stuff relating to presidential stuff and not so much about local issues, which gives Senator Gansert a tactical advantage, that she can speak as a local senator and speak to and appear more knowledgeable. But then again, keep this in mind: Senator Gansert's been around the community a long time. She has long roots to the Northern Nevada area. As well as she also works at UNR. She's also she's basically UNR's lobbyist, for lack of a word, public affairs coordinator, but she's the external affairs director. So she has that advantage working for her. So, but these numbers don't look good in 15, if I was saying that. So, and then maybe I'm getting and then U.S. House race. The U.S. House race. I'm not going to call that one. Right now, I would say Mark Amine is likely to be reelected, but Patricia Ackerman does portend to be a very good candidate in the sense that this is the first time Mark Amine has run against a female opponent since can't remember her name. She's now Lieutenant Governor. Kate Marshall in 2011. She is organizing a campaign apparatus that could portend to be a challenge. So, who knows? Otherwise, that is all I have. I'm going to do a different video maybe later in the week, maybe next weekend, on the locals and kind of break it down a little further, because I think after the second week, it's going to be a little easier for me to do that. And I'm kind of trying to touch base with people about what things are going on locally, because it's just me. I want to make this abundantly clear. It's just me and my briefcase. I don't have a sophisticated studio of equipment and personnel and interns backing me up. It's just me, my few years of experience on the battlefield, and just hearing what I hear on the street and knowing what's crap and what's not. And trying to be able to discern that and give you guys a bit of information to figure out what you should look at. Of course, please pay attention to coverage of COVID issues and coronavirus updates and case issues as it continues. Because honestly, that's going to dictate what's going to happen, flat out. Between now and the next 3 weeks, when things start occurring, that will dictate how people vote, how many people will vote, how they will, and what means will they do it? Will they? So much for cross. Will they mail it in, or will they try to punch it in? And honestly, mail in at this point advantages these guys. If they're Republicans, I stress this with great political concern, and I stress this with great considerable political observation. If the Republicans and nonpartisans are totally relying on in-person voting, it would be reasonable to say in 2 weeks from now, when the weather is at the right temperature for community spread, when flu is effectively in full spring, and potentially the weather could be an issue, if you're hanging your hat on people showing up and predictably having long lines at voting sites throughout the county and throughout the community, you arguably are potentially setting your Republicans up for failure and if not possibly defeat. And invariably, this is the election. If I was a Democrat, I would be salivating at the potential fact that power of an immense size is about to be handed to you in a plan on November 30th because of because of several events, namely the coronavirus management situations, the way that the coronavirus has been managed, arguably. But secondarily, the efficiency of the Nevada Democrats and the National Democratic Party on emphasizing early voting, on emphasizing mail-in voting, on remedying and recognizing the situation at hand. This may portend to have been the best thing that ever happened to them. Those numbers indicate that. So, I am going to call it a night. Stay tuned. A lot more. There's 14 days left. 14 days. And $19 hours left until this is over. So this is Don saying good night. Take care. Good morning, actually. Take care.